Sometimes it's difficult or nearly impossible to remember something that occurred a half a century ago. Or if you do recall it, sometimes one recalls it in a made-up fashion or a fictionalized fashion or in a fashion that's just pure fantasy. Well, what I'm about to relate is not made up, it's not fiction, and it's not fantasy. I can remember it as though it was yesterday. I was sitting in my office working on something, I can't recall what, and at that time I was running for district attorney in Boulder, Colorado. It was September of 1971, or excuse me, 1971. And there was a primary election coming up, and I was running against Alex Hunter. Now, this was the days of the hippies. This were the days of conflict, protest, anti-war protest, pro-war protest, rednecks beating up hippies, hippies getting murdered in some cases in the mountains. It defined my early career because fighting for civil rights and civil liberties constantly against the conservative element of Boulder was unique in many ways and gave me a chance for a lot of headlines that I would ordinarily, as a young lawyer, not have gotten. So here I was only practicing, I think 5 or 6 years, and I was already running for DA. I was pretty well known in a lot of circles. I was known as a champion of the poor, a champion of the underdog, and a champion of the young. The young were being persecuted. They felt they were being persecuted. They were being prosecuted for not registering for the draft. They were prosecuted for tearing up draft cards. They were prosecuted for not going or taking the oath of office. And as such, they could have the option of doing alternative service. So they could do alternative service as though they were inducted, but it had to be something like being a medic, not carry a weapon if they were a CO, or similar. If they didn't do alternative service or didn't volunteer for the draft, then they would get a 5-year prison term for draft evasion. So it was pretty hard on these people. The other thing at that time is drug enforcement was real political. They tended to enforce drug laws against people with long hair. There was a big correlation, statistical correlation there. And that year was also the first year that 18-year-olds could vote. There was a big movement afoot to give the 18-year-olds a vote because they could be drafted, they could be shot, they could have all kinds of things done to them, but they couldn't vote. Now, on the many cases I had, the World War II guys, my father's age, etc., were calling a lot of the people, the anti-war people, cowards. I can say this, I wouldn't stand out in a field, a fire zone, unarmed, rescuing wounded soldiers, putting them on helicopters, etc. that's dangerous shit, man. And I was thinking of people like my younger brother. He flew a helicopter, air search and rescue. He went into fire zones and picked up down pilots, picked up down soldiers, rescued lots of people. I was thinking of recent police shootings, and it was ironic to me. My brother risked his life many times, won 2 distinguished flying crosses, and never fired a shot. And I can imagine him being ordered into a fire zone to pick up a casualty or wounded person or down pilot and saying something like, "Well, there's shooting in there, man. I don't want to fly in there and get shot. I'll wait till the shooting stops and then I'll go in and rescue the dude." Sure, that's going to happen. But it didn't happen, and that's why he got the medals. I can also remember clearly in September of '71, there had been a bar or music venue in Denver called the Family Dog that had a lot of famous groups like Jefferson Airplane, Canned Heat, etc. playing, and they were always getting raided for drugs and things such as this. Well, where I lived in Denver, I was commuting to Boulder. There was a park, Washington Park, nearby, and they used to have free concerts that summer. And one was the Jefferson Airplane, another one was the Grateful Dead. So I'm sitting in my office, and my campaign manager comes running in, and he's in a real panic. He says, "They're going to wreck you. Your clients are going to be the cause of your collapse. They're going to ruin you. You got to stop them. You got to stop them." And I said, "Calm down, Rob. What's the matter? Tell me what's going on. Just got to stop him. We got to stop him." I said, "Well, tell me what's going on." "No, you come with me. I'll show you." So we go downstairs to this client's business right beneath me, next to a restaurant, Fred's, and go in there. And it's a clothing store, and they manufacture custom-made clothing. And my client had an assembly line going. His name was Marcelo, and he had been known to dabble in drugs occasionally. Had been known to sell them and retail them and wholesale them, etc. He'd been prosecuted after that a few times for drug offenses. Anyway, he was in his little store with his employees, and they had a stack of baggies and one of these printer things like they used in grocery stores, and they were stamping a baggie with the printer thing, handing the bag to the next person, who would take a handful of marijuana and stuff it in the bag, handing it to the next person, who would ziplock the bag and hand it to the next person, who put it in a box. And I go in there and I'm looking at him, and I said, "What's going on, Marcelo?" He says, "Well, man, we're going to get you elected." Now, apparently, I looked at the bags, and they were stamped Baggies for Blewitt, which I thought was kind of clever. I said, "What are you going to do with these?" And he says, "We're going to pass them out at the Grateful Dead concert. We're going to get you elected." I could just see the headlines of the paper. DA candidate, part of a conspiracy to distribute illegal drugs. So I didn't think he'd thought that through. And I told him I'd prefer he not do that. And he said, "You know, the 18-year-olds are going to vote. They're going to appreciate this. They're going to want this. They're going to back you. It's time to take a stand. So go ahead and take a stand." And I said, "Well, unfortunately, there's got to be more than just the 18-year-olds vote for me. And I don't want to get one group of voters and alienate a whole larger group. So let's cool it with the Baggies for Blewitt for some other time, but not on this election. And I got up and left. Well, it got reported to me that some of those bags got out and they were thrown at the Grateful Dead concert. And occasionally one of them will show up on Amazon, and I guess they're quite the collector's item. But you can see how things were politicized back then. And one of the things we'll get into in subsequent talks was the politicization of the drug war, and then how the CIA got involved and how it got even more politicized, and to the point where hundreds or thousands of innocent people were victimized by the drug war. The drug war, the cure was worse than the disease. It wrecked a lot of people. It wrecked a lot of future leaders of this country. And it tore the nation apart. And I'm not sure we've recovered even today. So I will be very curious this weekend, because it's the last alleged Grateful Dead concert and the end of an era before the group is finally retiring, or at least so they say. And they're going to give 3 concerts in Boulder this week. It's sort of a swan song to a great group with great insight into the society in which they were growing up and in which I just happened to grow up. So I hope you'll hit subscribe and follow me now that I'm better and recovered from RSV virus, COVID-19 virus, and Humana virus, plus a couple bouts of pneumonia, causing 4 hospitalizations between now and last Christmas. I think I'm doing okay. The physical therapist thinks I'm doing okay. I still get a little tired from having all these diseases, but I feel a lot better than I did a few months ago. I thank you for your support, your inquiries, and your kindnesses. Please have a good weekend and enjoy your 4th of July. And remember, the 4th of July is for Americans and not bureaucrats. It's for people that love freedom and not fascism. It's our holiday, and we should treat it like that. So everybody have a good weekend, have a good 4th, and thanks for listening.